4th meeting of the Prairie City Council will now come to order. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prior to the start of each City Council meeting, which is generally the first and third Tuesdays of the month, we afford an opportunity to Eden Prairie residents to address the Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government. Typically, as I said, these meetings are the first and third Tuesdays of each month, and the time period that we cover is 6:30 to 6:55 here in the Council chambers. If you want to speak at open podium, please contact the City Manager's office at 949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, your phone number, and the subject matter you wish to discuss. If time permits, after our scheduled speakers, I may open the floor to unscheduled speakers. This portion of the meeting is not televised or recorded. And if you have any questions, again, please contact the City Manager's office. The first thing we have on the agenda today is convening the HRA meeting, which is within our City Council meeting. I'd like to call that meeting to order. And the first item for business is to adopt a resolution to approve the proposed 2013 property tax levy to be $200,000 and accept the proposed 2013 budget of $200,000. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You'll see that we have two actions tonight related to our budget for both our HRA and our city. Within the HRA, by September 15th of each year, we need to set a preliminary levy for our HRA budget, and then a final levy and a final budget is set at the end of the year. And the levy could only be reduced from this point forward, so that also applies to the city budget. In the case of the HRA levy, those funds are dedicated to just a very few priorities within our HRA, whether it be our redevelopment planning or housing assistance programs. And we're also limited by the amount that we could levy through our HRA. And the maximum the City of Eden Prairie could actually levy would be $1.6 million. And we're much lower than that. Our proposed levy and budget is $200,000. And I believe that levy has been at that amount, has been flat at that amount for several years now. And that is the proposal that we're bringing preliminarily tonight at the HRA.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Getchell? Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Move to adopt the resolution to approve the proposed 2013 property tax levy to be $200,000 and accept the proposed 2013 budget of $200,000 for the HRA.
Second.
You can have it.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn the HRA?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. That brings us back to the council meeting where the first item is approval of the agenda and other items of business. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Your Honor. Just one quick council member report.
Okay.
Under
Council member reports.
14B. No, 14A.
Okay.
Well, I knew that.
Anything else?
Mayor, just a quick clarification. There's a goldenrod resolution change on an item on the consent agenda for a contract with MnDOT, so it's some minor language changes.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the council workshop held on Tuesday, August 21st, 2012?
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the city council meeting held that same date?
So move.
Second.
Any items to correct there? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion for approval of the 6 items on the consent calendar?
Move approval.
Second.
Anything to pull for questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That brings us to our public hearing tonight on the Golden Triangle Tech Center. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have one public hearing tonight, and that is a request by the Golden Triangle Tech Center for a zoning district change from I-1 to office on 11 acres and a site plan review on that same amount of acreage. Official notice of the public hearing was published in the August 23rd Eden Prairie News, and there was a public hearing held at the last Planning Commission meeting on August 27th. This is a proposal to change the zoning so we could allow for 100% office use on the 90,000 square foot building on this property. I think you may recall we had a similar request from another user in the Golden Triangle area for office as well. And this proposal, as well as the other one, did meet parking requirements. There are two conditions of the approval of this rezoning related to a traffic demand management plan, and then also the repair of a retaining wall that's on the north property line on this property. The Planning Commission voted 7-0-1 to approve the project, and the project proponent is here to provide a quick overview and answer any questions you may have.
Hi, thank you, everyone. My name is Ben Yarborough. I work for Cushman & Wakefield Northmark, and we represent United Properties, the owner of 7905 Golden Triangle Drive. As stated, the property is currently zoned I-2, and we have a waiver for up to 75% office. The goal of our proposal is a zoning change from I-2 to office. For a little background on the site, United Properties has owned the facility since January of this year. The facility is 92,000 square feet and is currently 65% occupied. The current tenant uses the space for office purposes, and the vacancies are also built out as office. We found that prospective tenants require more office than what is currently allowed under the I-2 zoning classification. I think you all have a parking plan that we submitted. On that plan, it shows 419 parking stalls. The numbered stalls are the stalls that we're proposing to add to the site. That 419 gets us a ratio that's just under 4.6 per 1,000 square feet. Once we add in those 41 stalls, it gets us to a ratio of 5 stalls per 1,000 square feet. So we're a bit above the requirement. I did want to call out the staff report that was mentioned. The Planning Commission approved this proposal subject to these two items. One was the TDM plan, which we have submitted. Just to summarize that, it sought a 10% reduction in peak hour trips, and we outlined a 2-year budget of $19,500. Whenever that's approved, we're prepared to make that deposit. So we just need some direction from the city on that, and we're prepared to make that deposit. The second item was the retaining wall. Plans have been submitted for permit on that. It has taken a little bit of time because we had to hire a retaining wall engineer to redesign the wall. Those plans have been contracted with a contractor, and they're currently being reviewed by the city. We think work's going to take probably 4 to 6 weeks on that project. That kind of summarizes our proposal. I appreciate your consideration. I think this change would attract quality tenants and be great for the area. At this time, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Yes.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So as part of the process, are there any planned changes to the building in terms of renovation or anything, or is that going to be driven by new tenants looking
yes,
for tenant improvements?
Yep, it'll be just tenant improvement driven.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yeah, I just have a question about what the availability of office space is in the Golden Triangle. Do you know, and what the demand is?
As a market, I'm not sure. What we've found from the space that we've been advertising is that people are looking for more office than what's available under our zoning classification, and that might be specific to our building too, just because it shows as office, so it's kind of naturally going to attract more of an office user, I think, too. So.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this rezoning?
Seeing none, I move to close the public hearing and approve first reading of the ordinance for zoning district change from I-2 to office 11.10 acres, and direct staff to prepare a development agreement incorporating staff and commission recommendations and council conditions.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Payment of claims. Is there a motion for approval? Motion for approval?
We're all waiting for the roll call. Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Woke this up. It's terrible.
Councilmember Aho.
Aye.
Councilmember Butcher Wickstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Case.
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson. Mayor Tara Lukens.
Aye. Next item is reports of council members. Mr. Case, you had something you wanted to
I
bring
do,
up.
real quickly. So I've been having the opportunity to wander about the city quite a bit, and I come across several small issues, but one I think deserves a little bit of more publicity, and I had talked to Mr. Getcho about this, and also through Mr. Getcho, then Mr. Ellis. But as we have attempted as a city to get our clean water from going into our sewer system, we've really gotten a lot of the sump pumps to drain more appropriately rather than right into the drains that goes into sewer. We have gone around done all of our inspections, and now they're emptying out into yards. Well, one of the concomitant problems that has developed, and I have witnessed this now twice in neighborhoods, and then I found out through Mr. Ellis and Mr. Getcho, I guess we know of 10 to 20 or so problems like this. So where there are streets where these pipes go out into the, from the yard out into the street, and they're in wet areas near swamps or whatever, they constantly run. So what's happening is the gutter that's in the street is constantly slimy, and no matter how dry the weather is, and kids are slipping. And in this one neighborhood I was in, a girl broke her arm, and people, older people walking across that slippery area. And it was just slimy, slippery, and it was for 50 feet. So I called Mr. Getcho, and Mr. Ellis is very aware of the problem, and I guess there are some pilot kind of neighborhood projects out there. But I wanted to raise it just to let people know that, and also maybe to let all of us know, is it a possible priority on our stormwater drainage utility fund? I guess we have is it $4 now in everybody's bill that goes into NERP pond cleaning and whatever? Is that a resource or a source for fixing, and I know there is a fixing this in some of the worst neighborhoods, and do we have them identified? So I just kind of wanted to throw it out and maybe get a quick answer back from Mr. Ellis.
Yes, just to follow up, we have noticed through our I&I program that a number of new residents are now pumping to the street, and that creates a whole new set of nuisance problems. And last year we did our first drain tile project, and that's essentially we're putting in a 6-inch perforated pipe in the ground, and people can directly tie their sump pump line into that system, and it carries it away through the storm drainage system. So it removes that nuisance from being in the slimy gutters that you see, the constant cattails in yards in some cases, and then just the neighbor-to-neighbor issues of your drainage water is coming onto my property, damaging it. So there are a whole host of issues. And last year we did our first drain tile project on Debbie Lane. It's been very well received. The neighborhood, from what I have heard, is very satisfied, very happy that the city did take on this project. And so we're doing our second one, and that was awarded within the last month, I want to say, about a $215,000 construction contract. So it's bigger than our first project. It's in that part of town where we know that northwest part of town. We know they have high groundwater. We have a lot of pumpers, and so that project is currently underway. And we are planning to budget about $150,000 per year to continue to do drain tile projects because they have been very popular. And we're actually funding it 50% out of the storm drainage fund and 50% out of the sanitary sewer fund because it is related to I&I, reduction of I&I. So we felt that it was justifiable, and it allowed us to pool more resources together to do more of these projects. So I suspect that in time, we might get a little bit more aggressive in knocking off some of these problem areas, but we've wanted to ease into it to make sure that we've dialed in the right design, that it's something that works for the neighborhood, and I think we're very close to knowing that.
So the neighborhood I was in was the first street going east where Homeward Hills and Anderson Lakes Parkway.
Waterford?
What is it?
Wexford?
Waterford.
Waterford.
And so a place like Waterford, does that get on the list, or how do certain streets rise to the level of being the top 10 or whatever? Because it was bad. I mean, it was 50 feet long and super slimy.
And we'll look at those through a cost-benefit analysis. If we determine that we have a number of property owners that are pumping, that we could go in and do a drain tile project and reduce a number of those in one shot, they're going to rise to the top of our list. I do believe somebody from that neighborhood has been in and contacted our engineering office about getting on the list, and it's in the process of being reviewed, doing a survey to find out how many pumpers we have. Is there a storm sewer system nearby that we could tie into? Is this a feasible project? So it is on our list, and that person will be contacted with a follow-up. But if you have anybody that has specific requests that we can talk to, just forward that information to us, and we'll be sure to respond to the citizen.
Thank you so much. Really good answer.
Thank you. Report of City Manager. Tax levy. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As I mentioned during the HRA meeting, we need to set our preliminary tax levy and preliminary budget by September 15th of this year. And we're currently in the second year of a 2-year budget cycle, so we like to plan ahead. As we've talked about, we're now on to a 10-year capital plan from a 5-year capital plan, and we're also on a 2-year budget cycle. So we put quite a bit of time in the first year of the 2 years into the 2-year budget. As you remember, several council workshops and meetings in 2011, and when we came to 2012 to discuss our budget and levy, which we did at workshop as well this summer, we had some good news to share, which was that the projected budget before we set the levy for 2013 was going to be in kind of the roughly in the 3.5% range. But over the last year or so, we've been able to find some savings, mainly in the health insurance area, due to our experience and some plan modifications, and I would argue even some wellness activities as well. We were able to find some reductions in the budget to bring that proposed budget down to at or just under 2.5%. And that was a lot of the discussion at our workshops this summer. So tied to that is the tax levy. And we are proposing preliminarily a tax levy of less than 1% again. Last year, the same levy, quite frankly, as last year, which is 0.9%. And we could still lower that levy between now and the end of the year, but we cannot raise it. And I had the question today of, many cities may set a levy at 2% or 3% and want to work down to 1%. And as more numbers come in and more information is available, quite frankly, we feel at this point in the year we have a lot of information available through our tax base, our tax capacity, our fiscal disparity numbers. We receive very little, if any, state aid to know that the budget and levy that we set now can be the same budget that we would set in December as well. Again, understanding that we can still lower that between now and then and not raise that. The second piece of positive news is what is the tax impact of that. So you may recall from workshops and public hearings, and we'll have another public hearing in December, that after notices are sent to all property owners after this preliminary levy is set tonight, that last year's 0.9% levy equated to approximate, I think, $6 or $7 annual increase to the median valued residential home in Eden Prairie. So we were talking less than $1 a month. The good news this year is this same levy this year actually equates to an $18 annual reduction. So we're looking at a reduction, all else being equal, for that median value. Obviously, values do increase, and sometimes taxes can slightly increase in value, but there are many scenarios this year in which taxes on the residential side will go down as well, and in some areas of commercial and industrial. We've seen for the first time, I think, in several years, that the property, the total tax base of the city is leveling off quite a bit. You may recall 6 to 7, 8% residential property value reductions, and that was still running quite a bit ahead of the county average. So we are one of the better cities in terms of holding values, but now we're seeing that flatten to maybe the 3% range. And we're actually seeing commercial values increase. And as you know, we've talked about here many times, new commercial and residential, multifamily and single-family investment in property. But it's still a decrease. But the positive news is that the small levy increase, the less than 1% levy increase, still equates to that $18 on average reduction. So tonight, what is before you is to pass a resolution adopting the preliminary budget, the levy, setting that public hearing for the first council meeting in December, which I believe is December 4th, even though the state and county need that information by December 28th.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Getchell? Mr. Case.
We've had several meetings throughout this year to struggle through this, so I think all of us up here have a pretty good grasp on it. But, Mr. Getchell, if we were to raise the levy 0.9%, every 1% generates $300-some thousand. So one could argue, I mean, either side, it's only $300,000, but on the other side of it, it's only $300,000 to try to cut it. And so in our discussion, and I could see people certainly suggesting that, but in our discussion, and I kind of want you to maybe elaborate or piggyback on this, but during the last 3 years, we've, with our budget, buttressed it by debt. We've been living on borrowed money, and we're trying to undo a cycle that we've gotten ourselves into. And the point, if we did the levy at zero, it would continue to extend that, getting to the point where we're living not on our banked money, but that we're actually generating the money each year that we spend. So would you say that's an accurate description, that the 0.9 allows us to continue that path, that trajectory of weaning ourselves off the living on the savings, basically, and then getting ourselves back to a really healthy environment? Because that's my first thought. Well, let's just make it zero. It's only $300,000, Let's find the cuts and do that. And we could. In fact, we have a permit on dollars that are way up this year. We could probably grab some of that and make that zero fairly easily. But it doesn't change the trajectory we were on, which was a bad one, of living on savings, in a sense, borrowed money. And so is that accurate?
That's very accurate, and that's a good point. I think a lot of this, though, plays into the economic environment you're in. If you're in an environment where you see your development revenue cut in half, one would argue that that is a time to use some of your reserves to keep your levy down. But in this case, as Councilmember Case mentioned, we've now, in the last 2 or 3 budget years, we've reduced the annual operating deficit from almost 1.6 or 1.7 million to closer to $500,000. And the idea is the budget that we'd like you to consider is one in which can continue to fund services at the level they're at and not use one-time dollars. So there can be one-time dollars that comes into the city, or even one-time spending or expenditures that come into the city. And long-term, if you project out 10 or 15 years, you're exactly right. You could put the levy down to zero, but you're just using one-time revenue or many-time recurring expenditures to do that. So the idea was, when we came down, actually an earlier conversation about the levy was at over 3% with the levy. And the idea was, if you're going to bring that levy down under 1%, you need to equate that to one-time dollars. And we were able to do that. The other comment I would make is on the development revenue side, I think at this point in the year, we're already at or ahead of what we budgeted for as we sit here in September. We've already made it. But the 2 comments on that would be, one is much of the revenue that comes in, sometimes the expense doesn't come till later. So if, for instance, with the UHG project, you'll have quite a bit of development revenue, but there's much work ahead in terms of planning and inspection. So we want to level that out over a period of 4 to 5 years, so we can come each year and say a budget 2.5 or under and a levy under 1, and not go straight to zero and 2 years later say that we need to go up. So we're trying to plan ahead and level that out. But our development revenue is tracking very, very well, to a point where when we look at the next 2-year budget, the 2013-2014 budget, we might be able to raise that revenue line and cut into that deficit even more, but again, do it in a way that's true to the numbers that come in, and also be conservative that there is, if there's a little dip in the market, we're not having to make last-second cuts.
Thank you. Councilmember Nelson.
I know that in 2 weeks, we're talking about the next round of some of the possible green projects that we may want to incorporate in. And does this budget allow for, some funding for some of those projects? I know a lot of them are sustainable, where we'll save enough money to pay for them, but it still does cost some upfront money. Is that booked into here?
That is, and in a couple different ways. There are some ongoing, not as expensive green projects, maybe along the lines of LED lighting that's built into the general fund that we can continue to do. Any medium-sized projects, I would say, would be funded by their own payback. And then maybe the larger projects that you're going to look at would be potentially related to debt, but we would deal with that at the time of debt issuance, and then the savings would pay back the debt.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure that since we had to set this today, that we weren't going to lock ourselves out of being able to do a yes decision on some of them.
We should not be.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I would move to adopt the resolution that certifies the proposed 2013 property tax levy to be $32,549,320 and sets December 4th, 2012 as the meeting which will include discussion of the budget and provide for public comment, and accepts the proposed 2013 budget of $42,750,579 and consents and approves the HRA levy of $200,000.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And congratulations to staff on bringing in a budget that puts us at this level. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
A report of our Community Development Director, Ms. Jeremiah.
Your Honor, council members, we're asking you tonight to adopt a resolution authorizing the city to apply for Livable Communities Transit-Oriented Development funds to develop a transit-oriented development zoning ordinance for Eden Prairie, and particularly the areas around the proposed future LRT stations. And of course, there are the 5 stations. And the TOD areas, as it's called in shorthand, are the half-mile radii around those 5 stations. So, of course, City West, Golden Triangle, Town Center, Southwest, and Mitchell Road are all included. We do anticipate the need for this type of ordinance to ensure that all of those areas are very walkable and have the type of zoning in place that will attract the type of development that we'll want to see there in the future. Unfortunately, we don't have the staff resources or the budget to do this on our own at this time, and we do believe the timing is critical since LRT could be under construction as early as 2014. So these areas are eligible for those TOD grant funds, and we believe that the ordinance would require approximately $75,000 worth of resources, including a consultant, and we are asking for a grant of $60,000. There is a 25% match that is required, so the city match would be $15,000. We can utilize part of that as in-kind services with staff overseeing the grant work, but we're also recommending that $7,500 of that come out of the Economic Development Fund. Do believe it's appropriate use of that fund since we will be trying to attract businesses and entrepreneurs into these TOD areas and also benefiting existing businesses in those areas. So the resolution that's before you tonight basically asks you to find that it's in the city's best interest to pursue the grant at this time, that this work on this TOD ordinance would not take place in the imminent future without these grant resources, and that with the grant resources we would be able to complete the work within 2 years. So if you're comfortable with that, I'd ask you to adopt the resolution so that we can move forward with that application.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Aho.
Couple of questions, Ms. Jeremiah. Could you please expand on what the scope of this project is? In other words, one of the questions I have is I think a lot of the business community has is, how are these stations going to affect the businesses that are already in place and there, and then also transportation issues? How is it going to affect existing, transportation that's there? Is the scope to talk about that at all, or is that out of scope in terms of this study?
Your Honor, Councilmember Aho, the scope that you're talking about really is addressed more in the transitional station area action planning process that's taking place through Hennepin County Community Works, with all 5 cities along the Southwest LRT being partners in that process. And we have just gone through the consultant interview process, and Hennepin County is working with the recommended consultant on a specific scope for that project. But that work is underway and will be starting this fall, or at least I should say the planning for that is underway, and we believe it should be starting this fall. So those questions will be answered, and we're very excited to see that work move forward. As we answer those questions on how it will operate, even during construction, how the areas will operate, and then really kind of day one of opening, we also want to be thinking about what kind of development might be attracted to this area, or what types of proposals we might see, and also how we want to guide the future of these areas. So this is a little bit more futuristic with regard to future development and making sure that we have the tools in place to get a good product in Eden Prairie.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Move to adopt the resolution authorizing the City of Eden Prairie to apply for livable community transit-oriented development grant funds for a transit-oriented development zoning district ordinance.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Any other business to be brought before the council? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Learn more at Energy.